How is this sports program different from the regular games or PT sessions that happen in most other schools?
So our program is different because it is comprised of three main elements. One, we have the regular sports teams, which take place in the morning: football, basketball, cricket for boys and girls. Secondly, we have the inclusive coaching sessions. These are sessions run by students, for students, and aimed at building leadership and communication skills. And finally, we have an inclusive sports day that aims to build a sense of community by bringing lots of different elements such as dance, costume making, as well as sports, so everybody in the school feels involved in the sports day.
Why should another school do this? Tell me, Neil, what would you tell a sports teacher or another school leader for them to buy into this sports program?
So I think to buy into this sports program, it's not about telling. I think the school leader and the teachers themselves have to experience what it's like to be part of a session. I think when they play sports in a way that's much more inclusive, where nobody feels like they're being judged on the pitch, then they themselves start to feel more like a child, having fun playing sports, getting engaged, starting to know their colleagues better. And then through this process, they can start to think, wow, this would be something that my students could even get really involved in. And I think the benefit of why a school should do it is that it adds a huge amount of value for building relationships, both between students, on and off the pitch, and between teachers and students.
Neil, how does your program impact gender stereotypes?
So I think one major way it breaks gender stereotypes is that boys and girls are playing alongside each other, that there is no hierarchy. So a lot of the times, boys think that girls can't play sports that well, and girls feel a little sometimes insecure playing alongside the boys. But in this program, what's valued isn't the fastest, the fittest, or the strongest. It's the person who has the best attitude, the person who includes their peers way better than anyone else. So because we change the scenario of what is valued, then we change the scenario of sports completely. And thus, gender stereotypes start to disappear both inside and outside the field.
What are the three mantras for a great sports coaching session?
So I think the most important thing is that students are well prepared and that they've designed a plan that's both appropriate for their class, and that they have a really clear sense of how that plan is going to work. There's a great, I suppose, anecdote I can share from this. Boney and Sakshi, two students, they had gone up to the hall, practiced with their drills, seen how it worked in reality, so they had a really keen sense of why they were doing what they were doing and how it would look. The second main thing is that during the session, the time management and moving between transition of different drills is made really seamless. This makes sure that the other students involved in the session really buy in to their coaches, even though they are students. And the third main element is that there's a really good reflection done on closing the loop, so that people really start to understand what they're learning from the session, and that it's not just an activity, but a real experience.
On what basis are the student coaches selected?
So during the session, the coach or the students' peers who are running the session look at the attitude and leadership capabilities and the way in which people are communicating with each other on the field. If a student is being really inclusive towards other people, then usually they're one of the ones who are nominated for the session. However, it's not always the most inclusive or best student in that terms who is nominated, but sometimes the coach might even pick a disruptive child for that session because he might think they would actually gain a lot of value from having to run a session for the rest of their peers, and that could benefit them also.
Have coaching sessions not ever gone bad? And as a sports teacher, what would you do in such a scenario?
So a session that's not that great usually is when the students aren't prepared, or they haven't really thought of innovative games that will get the best out of their classmates. And what happens in this scenario is then a lot of time gets lost, students get distracted, negative energy comes in. So what we'd suggest in this kind of scenario is that the homeroom teacher or the sports coach can actually step in at that moment, maybe take control for the rest of the session, and then also use that as a chance to give reflection to the rest of the class about things maybe you need to work on if you're planning a session. This can help the students as a whole develop better leadership and communication skills.
Neil, so are you saying you don't have a sports teacher?
So the students themselves actually run the sessions, but the school sports teacher still is there as part of the session. They might have run exemplar sessions earlier in the term, so students have an idea of what really a best case scenario looks like. And then the sports teacher observes the student, helps them with the planning of the session, and also is there to reflect on whether things have gone well or whether they haven't. Alongside this, the homeroom teacher participates in the session, so we do have two adults who are there observing, making sure the session goes off smoothly and that they also have the opportunity to play alongside the students.
But students are not trained as coaches. So where do they get the skills needed to facilitate the sports sessions?
So I think the school sports teacher plays a huge role in this, in that they're a great role model for the other students to help them learn how to really conduct a brilliant session. Secondly, they're a brilliant guide for the students when they have to fill out their form to decide what they're going to actually focus on. The sports teacher gives them feedback, also helps them reflect after the session, so that they really, through this process, are helping the students build that sense of how to be a great coach.
But the students are not really trained as coaches. So where do they get the skills to lead the sports sessions?
So at this age, I actually think it's the most important. So students are bogged down with a lot of academics, a lot of stress, and this can be a huge opportunity for them to both bust that stress and secondly, to bond with their class. Students at this stage are all in individual batches studying subjects that they don't really have many time to gel up together. So this really provides them a great opportunity to say, what are we about as a class? How do we build that sense of community? And let's not forget all of these things about inclusivity that we learn through the sports program when we go out into the real world in college and beyond.